بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Tonight we're going to continue with the book Aqidat al-Tawheed by Sheikh Salih Fawzan Hafidhahullah, and it is a basic Aqidah book, a basic book on the beliefs of the Muslim, the basic beliefs of every Muslim. And we started before Ramadan, but we didn't finish, and we stopped for the Ramadan classes, Kitab al-Siyam, the book of fasting, and everything that was connected to Siyam. So we already covered the meaning of Aqidah. We already covered the different aspects of Tawheed, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Asma' wa-Sifat, and Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. We discussed the Shahadatain, the meaning of the Shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. We did the Arkan, the pillars of the Shahada, the conditions for the Shahada, the meaning of worship, and other things along with that, which brings us to our point where we are today. And we stopped on Al-Fasl al-Thalith, the third section of the book, which is Al-Kufr, Ta'rifuhu wa Anwa'uhu. Disbelief. What is disbelief? What is considered to be disbelief? And the different types of kufr, the different types of disbelief. So he starts out, hafidhahullah, with ta'rifuhu, al-kufr, al-tawqiyah. In the language, the Arabic language, it means a covering of something. And then Islamically, shar'an, al-kufru diddul iman. It is the opposite of iman. The opposite of belief in Allah is, of course, simply to disbelieve in Allah Jalla wa Ala. To disbelieve in Allah Jalla wa Ala. So, al-kufr. He says, فَإِنَّ الْكُفْرَ عَدَمَ الْإِيمَانِ بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. It is the absence of belief in Allah and in His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he says, سَوَاءً كَانَ, and this is important because when it comes to disbelief, it's not only what a lot of us think sometimes, that kufr is only, or disbelieving in Allah is only to worship Jesus, alayhi salam, for example. Most people in our area come from Christianity, a Christian background. But disbelief in Allah is not restricted to what we normally know as, or what is the most famous thing, or what might be the most famous thing that sticks out to us. Okay? Yes, that is considered disbelief in Allah Jalla wa Ala, is shirk. It is to put partners with Allah, but it's not restricted to the worship of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. So he says, this disbelief in Allah includes سَوَاءً كَانَ مَعْهُ تَكْذِيبٌ أَوْ لَمْ يَكُنْ مَعْهُ تَكْذِيبٌ. Whether a person actually denies the existence of Allah, this is also disbelief. Or they might not deny total existence of Allah, as there are people who deny the existence of Allah Jalla wa Ala, which is kufr, is disbelief. This is one form, right? But there are people who, as he says, bal mujarrad al-shak, doubt in Allah Jalla wa Ala. To doubt in Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is also a form of disbelief. So it's not restricted to what we may know as the norm, or the most, I don't know about famous, but the most known to us. The most known to us is that maybe, for example, whatever deen a person leaves to come to Islam, they may consider whatever they left disbelief, and it stops there. But it doesn't stop there. That's one form. There are other forms. For example, if a person came from a Christian background and they accept Islam, then they know, okay, the Christians, they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in His Messenger. So they say, I left that disbelief for Islam, alhamdulillah. But that's one type of disbelief. Then you have other people, like atheists, they deny the existence of Allah Jalla wa Ala altogether, which is another form of disbelief. So it's not restricted to what we may know, but there are many different types of disbelief. So he says after that, so he breaks it down, as the ulama do, into two types. Kufr akbar, the major form of disbelief, which will a person is not considered a Muslim anymore. If a person falls into this, or kufr akbar, means that these things, a person is not considered a Muslim anymore. And from those things are takdeeb. Denial of Allah's existence is a form of major disbelief in Allah, where a person cannot be a Muslim and at the same time deny Allah's existence. Tayyib. It also includes, major disbelief includes a shak, to doubt in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. A person has doubt. And this is why from the shurut, from the conditions of the shahada, is what? Al-yaqeen. That a person, when they make the shahada, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, that they have no doubt. They are certain. Meaning a person doesn't take shahada and they're not sure if can I still worship what I was worshiping before? Should Allah Jalla wa Ala really, all my worship should be for Allah? And a person doubts in that type of a way, this is not, they haven't fulfilled the conditions for the shahada. The shahada that a person believes that all worship with certainty, no doubt about it, that all worship is for Allah Jalla wa Ala. So this first type, and another type, as he mentions, is kufr al-nifaq. Kufr al-nifaq. Disbelief, and I'll use the word general like this intentionally, hypocrisy. The disbelief of hypocrisy. And we're going to discuss hypocrisy in a little more detail, inshallah ta'ala. So from the major types of disbelief, that if a person believes like this, that they are not considered a Muslim anymore, is hypocrisy, that a person is a hypocrite. And we'll get in detail, inshallah ta'ala, with, or the details of hypocrisy, inshallah ta'ala. This is the first type of kufr, of disbelief. What is it? The major disbelief that if a person believes like this, they're not considered a Muslim. Or if a person has this in their heart, because again, the issues of kufr, nifaq, hypocrisy, and some of these issues are not issues that we go around labeling people with and digging up people to see, are you really Muslim or not? We, the Muslim, nahkam ala zahir. We're responsible for what a person makes apparent to us. Meaning, if a person came in here right now and prayed rak'ah 10, they prayed 2 rak'ah and they sat out in the class and they stood up, they prayed maghrib with us, right? And at the same time, that person had doubt in their heart. Allah protect us all. The person had doubt in their heart about the existence of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Does Allah actually exist? But they prayed with us, right? They sat in the class, they prayed rak'ah 10, or the person had some shak. Is the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, is he really, is it? They doubted like that. In that case, what do we consider him based on what we've seen or what she's done? We basically consider them Muslims. This is all we have. All we have is what's apparent, what's in their heart, and Allah knows. And Allah knows what's in the hearts of the people, but it's not our job to try to dig in and consider what is in your heart. Are you doing that to show off? Are you really a Muslim? They come in here, they pray, and if somebody comes out and tells you something, that's something different. But for us to judge every person that walks in, and we have a problem judging every person that we see, a lot of us, some of us, not all of us, some of us have a problem with judging people based on are they familiar to me? Do I know you or not? If I know you, then I can give you, okay. But if I don't know you, you're a foreign face, then doubtful about your, some of us don't go far as your Islam, but I'm doubtful about your implementation of the Sunnah. Are you even on the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam? Based on what? Because I don't know you. And if you were on the Sunnah, then what? I would know you, right? I know all of Ahl Sunnah. I know everyone that's on the Sunnah. So the fact that I don't know you or you're not a familiar face to me, then and this is not correct. But what's correct is we judge what's apparent. A person comes in, they pray, they give the salams, they sit down, they pray maghrib with us, alhamdulillah, that's a Muslim. I don't know when they took shahada. I don't know if they really, none of that is of my concern. All I have is what's apparent. Everything beyond that is with Allah. And every person who does that will be held accountable Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that's not our job. So the first department or section is the major disbelief that if a person has these things in their heart, then they're not even Muslim with Allah Jalla wa Ala. Again, with Allah, and Allah. As far as us, they might keep coming in here and praying every day with doubt in their heart. That's not our job. to ask every Muslim that comes to pray, do you have certainty that Allah is this, and you have certainty? We're not investigators.
But it's been my experience through Allah reveal what you consider.
No doubt. That Allah will reveal what's in the heart usually comes out at some point. At some point, what a person believes usually comes out. Right? Exactly. So we don't have to pry and try to, again, if somebody comes to you and they open up and they say, listen, this, that, and the fourth, that's a different situation. As far as each person that we come across from the Muslims having doubt in their Islam, and this is not the way of Ahl Sunnah. Tayyib. The second category of kufr, disbelief, is kufrun asghar. The minor disbelief, la yukhrij min al-millah. That if a person does something like this, then this does not necessarily remove them from Islam. It doesn't mean that they're not Muslim because they did it. It doesn't mean because they believe like this, they're not a Muslim. And usually, this section has to do with actions. The minor kufr, the minor disbelief, has to do with actions, as he says, huwa kufr al-amali. It is kufr amali. There's some type of action that a person does. And as he says, وَهُوَ الذُّنُوبِ الَّتِي وَرَدَتْ تَسْمِيَتُهَا فِي الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ كُفْرًا. As their actions that we find either in the Quran that Allah referred to that action as being kufr, or in the Sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ referred to that action as being kufr. This is how we know that it's kufr, that is referred to in the text as being kufr. Now, looking at that, every time we read the word kufr now, you have to, what? Slow down, wait a minute. Kufr here, does that mean the major kufr, that if a person does this, they're not Muslim? Or does it mean the minor level of kufr, that if a person does it, it's not something that's praiseworthy, not something that a Muslim should be doing, but what's the ruling on the person? What's the ruling? If I do this, am I still a Muslim? Because that's what we should be worried about first. If I fall into this, how does it affect my Islam? Not fulan and this one and that one, because as Allah said in the Quran, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِكُمْ نَارًا. Save yourselves, save yourself first, and your families from the hellfire. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. If I fall into one of these things, how does it affect my Islam? So this second level, which is considered the minor kufr, doesn't necessitate that a person is not Muslim anymore, as it comes in some of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, sibab al-Muslims fusuq. He said to curse a Muslim, to talk bad about a Muslim, is disobedience. وَقِتَالُهُ and to fight him, to fight another Muslim, Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ. وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ. And if we leave it translated, and to fight another Muslim is disbelief. Now, does that mean when Muslims fight that they're not Muslims anymore? Everybody with me? So now when you see these words disbelief, depending on the translation, if the translator doesn't clarify, right, the major, minor, then the reader, depending on their level of understanding, may interpret it the way they interpret it, which may not always be correct. But the minor kufr is generally, as he says, kufr amali, actions that a person does that the Prophet ﷺ has described as being kufr, disbelief, or that we find in the Quran. Also, in the Quran, where Allah tells us that, and it doesn't mean, by no means does it mean that the lower level of disbelief is okay. It doesn't mean it's okay to do these things. But this knowledge is to understand, if this happens, the person, how does it affect the person's Islam? Right? How does it affect the person's Islam? Not to say that, no, that's just minor. That's not, well, if you do it, you're still a Muslim, so it's not no big deal. No. That's not the understanding. But we have to know, if this happens, what is the case for the person who does it? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, Sibabul Muslim fusuq. To curse and disrespect and talk bad about another Muslim is fusuq, disobedience. Al-khuruj an ta'atillah. That a person has left the obedience of Allah with the disgracing and the disrespect and talking bad about another Muslim. And then he said, وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ. And to fight another Muslim is kufr, disbelief. Now, how do we know that kufr, that disbelief, is from the minor types of disbelief and not the major? Well, Allah told us in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hujurat, where Allah speaks about two groups of Muslims fighting. And Allah described them as being believers. He described two parties of Muslims that fought each other as still being what? Believers. Allah didn't make them kufar. He didn't make them disbelievers based on them fighting. So now you have the hadith that says to fight is disbelief. So the question is now, does that disbelief mean if you fight another Muslim that you're not Muslim anymore, or they're not Muslim anymore? Right? Allah said in the Quran, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. Right? Allah said, if two parties, min al-mu'mineen, from the believers, the two groups from the believers, they're not disbelievers, they believe in Allah and His Messenger, both groups. If they fight, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا, then come and make peace between them. Make peace between your brothers. And then Allah went on further in the ayah and He said, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. Indeed, the believers are brothers. فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. So, if your brothers have a problem, make peace between your brothers. So, it doesn't necessitate every time that we read the word disbelief that it means that a person isn't Muslim anymore. Again, it depends on the context. It depends on the action or the belief. So, he summarizes at the end the differences between major disbelief and minor disbelief. The first difference, أن الكفر الأكبر يخرج من الملة ويحبط الأعمال. That if a person commits major kufr, major disbelief in Allah, for example, denying Allah's existence. They deny that Allah even exists. Allah protect us all. You know what I mean? That if a person does this, then this what? A Muslim. If a Muslim does this, then this takes them outside of Islam. If they really believe that, they're not considered Muslim anymore. And all of their actions, their good deeds are what? Erased, null and void. Why? Major disbelief. This is a form of major disbelief. Takdeeb. Tayyib. Minor disbelief. Al-kufr al-asghar. Number one, it doesn't mean that if a person does it, they're not Muslim. They're still Muslim. Is it a sin? Yes. From the major sins, possibly from the major sins. But does it mean every time a person commits a major sin that they're not Muslim? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. This is another issue. We have to be careful of saying stuff like, or even questioning. I've heard people even question people's Islam based on them. I haven't seen him or her around. I don't know if they're still praying. How you don't know if they're still praying? He hasn't come around. As if the Muslim can't pray wherever we are. As if a man or a woman can't pray when they're at work. As if they can't pray inside of their homes. As if they can't pray when they're traveling, right? As if they can't pray. They might be out somewhere doing some disobedience and they still praying. Not that it's okay to do it, but the reality of we have to be careful of casting doubts on a person's Islam based on half information or information that is not clear. So the minor disbelief, number one, it doesn't remove a person from Islam. And number two, لا يحبط الأعمال. It doesn't invalidate all of a person's actions like the major disbelief does. لكن ينقصها بحسب. But it does take away from the reward, and it takes away from a person's actions depending on what it is that they've done, depending on the action. So everything is what? Case by case. It's case by case. And this is an issue that's serious and it's delicate. Because if you go too far in this issue, then you go to the beliefs of some of the Ahlul Bid'ah, the groups that have gone astray, the groups that have left the path of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So people shout out, ain't right, whatever term that we're used to hearing, meaning if a person is shot out, meaning they've left the path of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. They left the path of the Quran and Sunnah. Right? This is general. And there's a little more detail to that word that may come today, inshallah, Allah. What does it mean to be astray? Tayyib. He says the second difference, and al-kufr al-akbar يخلي صاحبه في النار. that the person who commits major disbelief in Allah, that they will be in the hellfire forever. This is their destination. As the kufr akbar إذا دخل صاحبه النار فإنه لا يخلد فيها, that the person who commits minor disbelief, that if they enter the hellfire, if Allah punishes them, if Allah chooses to punish that person with the hellfire, that they won't be in the hellfire forever, that they will exit from the hellfire. As he says, he says what? وَقَدْ يَتُوبُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ عَلَى صَاحِبِهِ, that the person could make tawbah and Allah could forgive him. Allah is al-Ghafar, al-Ghafur al-Rahim. Allah may forgive the person. Yeah, they were wrong. They didn't make major kufr. They were wrong. But Allah may forgive a person, and in that case, that the person will not be destined to the hellfire forever. Everybody with me? The major difference between major disbelief and minor disbelief, and we have to be careful of accusing one another or putting doubts on a person's Islam. Putting doubts on a person's Islam, we have to be careful that it's a dangerous thing, and it's not something that we should take lightly, that we judge people based on what's apparent. Whatever's apparent, this is all we have to judge by. And Allah knows what is in the hearts of every person. طيب. After that, he moves on to Al-Fasl al-Rabi', the section of the book, which deals with An-Nifaq, hypocrisy. Ta'rifuhu wa anwa'uhu, the meaning of hypocrisy and the different types of hypocrisy, which is similar, it's close to the same breakdown of disbelief. It's similar, it's close to it. The meaning itself, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful with this word too, because we have brothers and sisters, we have a situation, and a brother or sister does something, right? And they say, man, he a hypocrite. She a hypocrite. She ain't, what? I ain't giving salams. I'm not giving her salams anymore. If she give them to me first, I'll give them back, but I'm not going to initiate assalamu alaikum to him or her anymore. Why? We were supposed to do something, and she said or he said that they were going to do it on the 10th, right? And this was a serious favor that I asked them to do for me. Right? They lied to me. Well, I told them something, right? I trusted them with something and they broke their promise. That's the hypocrite, according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So we got to be careful, as we're going to see right now. So the meaning of an-nifaq fi shar', Islamically, hypocrisy, it means idhar al-islam al-khayr wa ibtan al-kufr wa shar', that a person outwardly, they display Islam. They show everybody that they're Muslims and that they're upon khayr, they're upon good, right? Worship, right? On the inside, they really don't believe. And they really have evil thoughts about the Muslims, or evil thoughts about Islam, maybe evil thoughts about the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, right? This is a nifaq, hypocrisy. طيب. Allah made, as he said, وَجَعْلَ اللَّهُ الْمُنَافِقِينَ شَرًّا مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. He made them worse. Worse, that a person comes in, they outwardly display Islam, and inwardly they really don't believe. Now let me ask you a question. How do we know that a person is a hypocrite? By their manners. So by the manners of a person, we can say that what? Based on that, by the manners, by the way a person carries himself, if we say by their manners, if a person carries himself, let's say a Muslim, right? Because the hypocrite, apparently he's a Muslim or she's a Muslim. So if we say we can tell a person's a hypocrite based on their manners, that means if we label them, let's say they have bad manners, as we say, they shot out, right? He shot out, she shot out. So because they're shot out, that means a munafiq, if we use that, that means they're showing us Islam, but they really don't believe on the inside. That's not safe. That's not safe.
There's no way for you to know that. That's when they're entrusted with an amana, they break them. When they
quarrel with a person, they extra.
They go overboard and argue. Like,
For
those 4 things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. So if we use that like that when they're trusted with something, as it comes in the hadith, when they're trusted with something, that they break the promise, they don't uphold the trust. So when a brother or sister, you're entrusted with something and they don't uphold the trust. So if we use that, that means that they're only showing us Islam, but they really disbelieve on the inside. They only have one of the traits. Like, they got all 4 of them. Huh? Huh? That's it. The question is, how do we know, if a person walks in here right now, how do we know if they're a hypocrite or not? You don't know. We don't know. And it's not our job to walk around trying to pull the wool off everybody, seeing if everybody really Muslim or not. Right? That's not our job. Our job is to do what? Based on what's apparent to us. People come in here and pray all day long. We would sit around and stare at everybody and check and see, I don't know. No, that's not our job. What's apparent is what's apparent to us. If a hypocrite, as Allah says, in the munafiqeen fi dark al-asfal min an-nar, that the hypocrites will be in the lowest part of the hellfire. In the lowest part of the hellfire, in Surah An-Nisa, ayat 145, which is a scare in itself. Tayyib. The different types of hypocrisy, also like this belief, broken down into 2 types. Hypocrisy that if a person believes like this, then they're not Muslim anymore. Takes them outside of Islam. And the hypocrisy that if they do it, it doesn't necessitate that they're not Muslim. Clear? Like, if we know that, then we say, as the Sheikh said, the first type of hypocrisy is nifaq al-i'tiqadi. The hypocrisy of a person's belief. How they believe. How they believe. This is one form, and this is, as he says, nifaq al-akbar, the major type of hypocrisy. الَّذِي يُظْهِرُ صَاحِبُ الْإِسْلَامُ وَيُبْطِنُ الْكُفْرَ. That the person who has this type of hypocrisy, they show outwardly Islam, but in the inside, they really don't believe. Now, how would you know that? How would any of us know that about any of the Muslim walking around? We wouldn't know. Unless a person came out and said something, we wouldn't know. Clear? Tayyib. It says this type of hypocrisy is the part, as it says, مُخْرِجْ مِنَ الدِّينِ بِالْكُلِّيَّةِ, that a person is outside of the religion in totality. In totality. And that their destination is the hellfire, the lowest part, as Allah said in the Quran. Tayyib. Again, that wouldn't be our call, right? A person could come here and be a hypocrite for years. There were hypocrites. There were hypocrites during the time of the Messenger, ﷺ. So it's not like something that's foreign or impossible, but it's not for us to put doubt on every Muslim that comes in here, or wherever we are. The asl, the origin of a Muslim, is a Muslim, what's apparent to us. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Now, if you know the person's not Muslim and they just give you salams, that's something different. Then they're not Muslim, and we already know that. We're talking about people who, according to what we see, they're Muslims. If they have hypocrisy on the inside, that's between them and Allah Jalla wa Ala. So this first major hypocrisy is what is called nifaq i'tiqadi. And nifaq al-i'tiqadi is the belief that a person has where they show Islam, but on the inside, they really don't believe. On the inside, they really don't believe. So maybe they show Islam, but they really don't believe, as he mentions, takdeeb al-rasul. They really don't believe in the Messenger, alayhi salatu. But they come, they talk sunnah, they'll say all of this, the normal stuff, the words that we hear. But on the inside, and Allah knows they really don't believe. طيب, or تكذيب بعض ما جاء به الرسول, or they don't accept some of the things that the Messenger ﷺ came with, which is dangerous. Denying the Messenger ﷺ, or denying some of the ahkam that the Messenger ﷺ came with, some of the rulings that he came with, is dangerous, as it comes under kufr, depending on what it is. It could be disbelief, it could be nifaq. Either way, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So this first type is the major hypocrisy, which has to do with a person's belief. The second type of hypocrisy is, as he said, النفاق العملي, the hypocrisy in a person's actions, which usually is what we know of people, right? Somebody lies to you. The hadith says, as it says here, he brings a hadith that أربعون من كنا فيه كان منافقا خالصا. That there are four things. If a person has all of these four things, then they're a hypocrite. From the things he mentioned, alayhi salatu wasalam, is they're trusted with something, and then they betray their trust, right? This is one thing. So what happens? You trust somebody with something, they betray the trust, we say what? You fell right under the hadith. Just like the Prophet ﷺ said, you're a munafiq. Right? That's a problem, that's a mushkila. You're a hypocrite, akhi. You're a hypocrite. That's how we talk. For some people it's normal. You're a hypocrite. Some people, I heard people call people kuffar, brothers. I heard brothers call other brothers a kafir, because he wouldn't help them. Oh no, man, you kafir, man. You ain't a Muslim, because he wouldn't help him. And for real, he wanted the brother to put his job on the line and do something. He was at work. He ain't supposed something he's not supposed to be doing. He wanted him to do something he's not supposed to do. He's working halal to support his family, feed his kids, his wife, his children. Somebody else wants him to do something he's not supposed to do. He refused to do it. He told him kafir. Just like that. Due to what, as we spoke about the other day, ignorance, not knowing these basic ahkam. So this second level of hypocrisy, nifaq al-amali, it says, وَهُوَ عَمَلٌ شَيْءٍ مِنْ أَعْمَالِ الْمُنَافِقِينَ, that a person does an action that a hypocrite may do. But at the same time, مَعْ بَقَالِ الْإِيمَانِ فِي الْقَلْبِ, at the same time, they still have belief in their heart. They still believe in Allah Jalla wa'ala. They still believe in Allah and the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and they love Islam, and they love the Sunnah, and they love the Muslims. But they do as the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبٍ, when they speak, they lie. He's a liar, right? He's a liar, or she's a liar, right? They grew up lying and they carried over, they're Muslim now, and they still got the bad habit of lying. A habitual liar, some people. Some people just lie. You say, I didn't even ask him anything. He just started telling the story, all right? A habitual liar. But the fact that they lied, not to say it's okay to lie, number one, but the fact that they lie, and the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبٍ, that when he speaks, that he lies. Does that mean that they're not Muslim anymore? That means, no, it doesn't mean that they're not Muslim, but it means they've done an act of hypocrisy, an action of the munafiqeen. They've done an action of the hypocrites. It doesn't necessarily remove them from Islam. Tayyib. So the second type, this minor form of hypocrisy, doesn't remove a person from Islam, لكنه وسيلة إلى ذلك, but it could possibly lead a person further down the road of disobedience to the major form of hypocrisy. So either way, it's dangerous. Either way, it is dangerous. And this is something that we should all be aware of. We shouldn't think that we're free from hypocrisy, any of us. And there's, as he says here, he brings a narration that the Sahaba, وَكَانَ الصَّحَابَةِ, that they used to fear falling into hypocrisy. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said about the Sahaba, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي, the best of the ummah, the best of the people is who? My generation, the Sahaba, that the Prophet ﷺ was there, and his Sahaba were there with him in the generation. That those people in that generation feared being from the hypocrites. So how we think, because we did 30 days of shaky, a 29-day, Allah knows best of our intentions throughout Ramadan and how serious we were when we weren't in front of people. We did what we did for 29 days and we think we're on top. We think we're, mashallah, we've reached some type of level that we don't fear being from the hypocrites. And he brings the narration of Ibn Abi Mulaika, a man who said, أَدْرَكْتُ ثَلَاثِينَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. He said, I met 30 of the companions of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. 30 of the people who the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said were from the best of the people. The best, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي. The best of the people are those in my generation. Abu Bakr and Umar and the rest of the Sahaba that lived during the time of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, I met 30 of those people from that time. 30 of them. وَكُلُّهُمْ يَخَافُ النِّفَاقَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. All 30 of them feared that he was a hypocrite. And they were from the best that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam spoke about. خَيْرَ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. Then those that come after the next generation. But that generation, the Sahaba, they all feared hypocrisy, so there's no way that we should feel like we just, we think we reached some type of level and we shouldn't be the same way. Tayyib. He summarizes some of the main differences between the major hypocrisy and the minor hypocrisy. Does anybody know? One difference between the major and the minor?
Say that one more time.
He summarizes some of the differences between the major hypocrisy and the minor hypocrisy.
Major has to do with beliefs and the minor has to do with actions.
Jay, the major hypocrisy has to do with a person's belief, and the minor hypocrisy has to do with a person's actions. Tayyib. What else?
It takes you out the fold of Islam.
Hmm?
Somebody can say,
Somebody can say? What do you mean?
say something, shout out.
It could be a statement, okay. Only from what we already did, though. From what we did so far. That the major hypocrisy is belief and the minor hypocrisy is actions.
With major, can take you outside of Islam,
Right.
and with the minor, you still be Muslim, but you'll be on the path if you continue to kufr.
Right.
So one can take you completely out of Islam immediately, and the other one, you can still be Muslim.
Right. The major hypocrisy removes a person from Islam. The minor hypocrisy doesn't remove them from Islam, but they have a trait, a characteristic, they're carrying a characteristic from the characteristics of the hypocrites, which we don't want either way. Tayyib. It says that thirdly, in the nifaq al-akbar la yasul min mu'min, that the major hypocrisy doesn't come from a believer. وَأَمَّا النِّفَاقَ الْأَصْغَرُ فَقَدْ يَصِلُ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِ. A believer, a person might lie. A person might argue, right? And they go overboard in the argument. They get belligerent, disrespectful, out of pocket, cursing people out, right? As mentioned in the hadith, that's a sign of a person's hypocrisy, but it's an action. So a believer, we lose our temper. Allah forgive us. We lose our temper sometimes. And then we do what? We fall under taking on the trait of the munafiqeen, the hypocrites. It doesn't mean that if a person does that, well, she ain't Muslim no more. She cursed me out in the Family Dollar after Jumu'ah. So when she comes back to the masjid, I'm not giving her salams. And if I was you, they tell other people, I wouldn't give them salams either. Right? It's not the case, and that is a big mistake. After that, he discusses a couple of terms that might be familiar to us and they might not be. And generally, these terms kind of follow the same pattern as the major kufr and the minor kufr, the major disbelief and the minor disbelief, and the major hypocrisy and the minor hypocrisy. One of them is al-fisq. Al-fisq, which is usually translated as disobedience. Disobedience. Al-fisq in the Arabic language means al-khuruj, to leave something. To leave something. But Islamically, if it says a fasiq, this person is a fasiq, a person of fisq. Al-khuruj an ta'atillah, that this person has left the obedience of Allah. Yes. Sometimes they train criminal. If a person's committing a crime, then it fits the description, right? Some people say open sin. It's a lot. It's room, right? Either way, the open sinner has left the obedience of Allah. A criminal has left the obedience of Allah, right? Now it could be on levels depending on what they're doing. So the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith earlier, he said, Sibabul Muslim fusuq. From the word fisk. To curse and disrespect and talk, as we say, talk crazy to another Muslim, right? It's fusuq. That a person has left the obedience of Allah Jalla wa Ala. طيب. He says, this fisk, هو يشمل الخروج الكلي. It could be that a person totally leaves the religion. Like what? What is some disobedience that will take a person totally outside of Islam? Shirk and kufr, right? It's fisk. It's disobedience to Allah. A person has left Allah's disobedience. Or it could be partial. They haven't totally left the religion, but they've done something that, what? Is from disobedience. As he says, a person who commits a major sin. A person who commits a major sin. Do we know any examples of major sins? There's a bunch of them, huh? A person not praying. What else? Adultery. Is he not? A shirk. Major sins. Major sins. That's one major sins. Huh? Making rap videos. Allahu Akbar. But how would that be from the major sins? What portion? Music? From the major sins. Intentionally killing another Muslim. طيب. I hope, inshallah, one day we can go through Imam al-Dhahabi's book, Al-Kaba'ir. Inshallah. Inshallah. Because there are a lot of major sins that we fall into that are normal. They're normal in our society, but according to Deen, Quran, Sunnah, they're from the Kaba'ir. Major sins. A lot. On the brother's side, on the sister's side. One of them is tattoos from the Kaba'ir. That the one who tattoos people and the one who gets the tattoo is cursed, according to the Prophet ﷺ. Yes?
Is it true, or maybe you heard that if they consider anything that has a direct punishment attached to it is from the major sin?
A direct, that's one definition. There's a couple ways that the major sins are known. This is not the time for that, but that's one of them. That a head is connected to it. One of the punishments of Islam is connected to it. Or sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions it in the major sins. He mentions it in the hadith. Right? Min akbar al-kaba'ir. He said from the top of the major sins, and he mentioned disrespecting the parents. From the top of the major sins. Right? The major sins and their minor sins. He said from the top of the major sins that a person disrespects their parents. So al-fisq is to leave off and leave the disobedience of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So it could be a person does a sin. It could be that a person does a sin that totally takes them outside of Islam. And it could be that a person does a major sin that doesn't take them outside of Islam. They're still Muslim. They committed a major sin. It's not something that's light. But they're Islam. They're still considered Muslims. طيب. He also mentions ridda, which we know as apostacy. Apostasy. And this is also another chapter that is dangerous. Dangerous to consider a person that is known to be a Muslim, and for you to come and say he or she is not Muslim anymore. They apostated. So based on what? Right? That's what we got to understand. That the deen is not what I say, what you say. Anybody come and say anything. That's not Islam. Islamically, that's not acceptable. Islamically, that's not acceptable. That everything has to be traced back to Quran, Sunnah. We have traceable information in our deen. If the sheikh says something, and we love him, we respect him, as they say in Sala'in Warats, with all due respect, hats off. If the sheikh says something, out of husnul dhan, out of respect for the sheikh, we know, we assume, sheikh got dalil for that. He has some dalil from the Quran and the Sunnah, right? That's what we believe. We believe he has dalil. But a step after that, sheikh, what is the dalil for that? I would like to know the dalil for that, personally, for myself. Don't mean I don't trust him, but what? I would like to know, where can I go look that up? And that's what the Talaba doesn't do. Students of knowledge, it's not just And there's nothing wrong with it. But it's a difference between a regular person who's not considered a student of knowledge and a student of knowledge. Meaning, a student of knowledge will ask the Shaykh a question, and the Shaykh gives them an answer. And they're fine with that. Alhamdulillah. I was right, Shaykh. I asked the Shaykh, he said it was this type. A talib ilm may want to know a little more. Why? Because they are going on the path of maybe one day being from the ulama. So they say, what? The Shaykh says, Shaykh, is it permissible to do this? Shaykh says, nah, you Jews, permissible. Right? What's the next question? Based on what, ya Shaykh? No disrespect. The Shaykh, based on, what's the dalil? Where can I find that? Based on what? Right? Shaykh says, call Allah, in the ayah here. Tayyib. Shaykh mentions the ayah. Talib ilm, student says what? I know that ayah, but how does that ayah fit what you just said? You with me? You ever read something and then you read it, it says, this is the rule, this is the dalil. You read the ayah, you say that ayah don't even, has nothing to do with what I'm looking at. Right? You might need a tafsir. Or what they call wajh al-istidlal. What's the angle of proof? What in the ayat proves what you're saying? You can know the ayat and know the mas'ala and you don't know how it's connected. The Talib ilm says, well, Shaykh, what in the ayat proves that this is permissible? He says, well, the wajh al-istidlal comes from maybe the lugha in Arabic. Or the wedge comes from this, or it comes from that. It's a bunch of things it can come from. Where the general person, they're not students and they're not trying to be students. They work their job, support their family, they practice Islam, and they go home, which is fine. Because it's not like in Saudi, I don't know what people think. Saudi Arabia is not a country filled with a bunch of students of knowledge, everybody walking around and all of them. That's not life. People work regular jobs and just be Muslim. So the regular person, they'll come, Shaykh, is this permissible? Nah, permissible. Alhamdulillah. They go home, they tell their family, spoke to the Shaykh today, he said it was permissible, we're fine. And they live life, which is okay. But there's a group of people who go above that. Why? What's the dalil? What makes it a dalil? Okay? Is this agreed on or is this khilaf in it? That's a whole nother level. Tayyib. Lastly, is this, we only got 1 minute for this. Then maybe we'll stop here. Or the apostasy, ar-ridda. And ar-ridda is lugatan ar-rujur, to return back to something. Apostasy in the Arabic language, the Arabic word ar-ridda means to return. Islamically, is that a person, as he says here, that a person, apostasy happens when a person, ibtikab naqid min nawaqid al-Islam, that a person does something from the invalidators, things that invalidate a person's shahada, which is important to know. Islamically, there is no once a Muslim, always a Muslim, right? Now, if a person, all they show is Islam, then that's all we have. But they might show Islam and they do something Islamically, that means that takes them outside of Islam. But again, that's not our shughl, as they say. That's not my job to figure out and pry into your life and see, let me see. The 10 things that invalidate your shahada. Have you ever done any of these? Like that's not our job. Tell you. So it says when a person does, and this is important because this is not something new. This goes back to the books of fiqh. Qadiman, they have a whole chapter, Bab al-Ridda, Murtad, the chapter of the apostate and how to deal with the person who apostates. There's a whole chapter of how to deal with it, and this conversation was had over 1,000 years ago. It didn't start today. It didn't start 200 years ago. This conversation started over 1,000 years ago. 1,200 years ago, the conversation of how to deal with the apostate started, and we'll mention briefly and we'll stop, Ridda bil-qawl, that it could be that a person says something, a statement that takes you outside of Islam. That's why we got to be careful. We can't just jump on the next, as they say, the next wave of statements. Next internet, the internet is the internet. Say the internet won again, right? Every time somebody come up with a statement on the internet, the Muslim, we feel like we have to use their speech and their slang. And some of their slang is kufr, disbelief. Some of it is disbelief. It's a statement. of disbelief. Or ridda could be bil fi'l. It could be with an action that somebody does. It could be an action that takes a person outside of the religion. It nullifies their shahada. In the statement that a person makes, the reality of it, the statement could nullify the shahada. That's why it's called a naqid, nawaqid of Islam. We say, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Somebody comes after that, after they said it, and they say something that nullifies that. You just erase that by saying that. Or you just erase that by doing that action. Or they could erase that, the shahada, bil-i'tiqad, with the belief that they had. When they took the shahada, right, it was one thing. They come after that and they believe something else that nullifies and erases the shahada. And fourthly, he mentions was-shak. Ar-ridda bil-shak. A person has some doubt, they take the shahada, and after that they doubt about something that the shahada solidifies in al-Islam. And maybe next week we can mention some examples of the statements and the actions in brief. Any questions? Lastly, he says, or ridda could be by leaving off something. Not doing something could take you outside of Islam. By not doing it. Like what? The salat. And that's a whole issue in itself. That again, because we don't see people praying in front of us, because they don't pray Jumu'ah with us, because we don't see them in the places that we pray in, doesn't necessitate that they don't pray somewhere else. It's not a straight black and white like that. And we ask Allah to forgive us and protect us from any of our shortcomings and to give us beneficial knowledge and righteous actions. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
You got it.